Obamacare, the economy, jobs, a lot of topics here on behalf of the Republican leadership in the House. But clearly the strongest statement went about Benghazi, about truth and fairness in government from Speaker Boehner. He said, what I want is the truth. And then on the IRS, my question is, who is going to jail? We'll listen for more headlines from that. But in the meantime, we've had a congressman waiting in the wings here, and Martha has that.
Yeah, that's right. Utah Congressman Jason Chaffetz is on the Oversight and Government Reform Committee, and he joins us now. Let's listen to this. Welcome, Congressman. Good to have you here. Bill just mentioned the quote that was very fiery moments ago from John Boehner. We want to replay that for folks at home and get your reaction. Let's listen.
The IRS has admitted to targeting conservatives, even if the White House continues to be stuck on the word if. Now, my question isn't about who's going to resign. My question is, who's going to jail over this scandal?
Wow. What do you make of that, Congressman?
Hey, I'm glad to hear the speaker fired up. You know, what we hear consistently from the Obama administration is they're going to be the most transparent ever. But they seem, when these scandals happen, they seem to sort of blame everybody. Everybody's responsible, but nobody's held accountable. Nobody's fired. You go back and look at what happened with Benghazi and all the things that were going. Nobody was fired in that instance. You take scandal after scandal. Again, everybody says, oh, well, I take the responsibility, but nobody is actually held accountable. So to hear the speaker say that, hey, I'm proud of him.
Yeah, and there's a long history of that. We went through and looked at a lot of examples of that this morning. And you look at Fast and Furious, which there was so much outrage over ultimately from Eric Holder as well. But in the end, just a couple of people resigned. A couple of people were sort of moved around a little bit, and no heads really rolled in that situation. So you get to a point where if you're going to be emphatic about something and you're going to insist that something is intolerable, as the president has done on this IRS story, what comes next is the big question. Is it fitting for the Department of Justice to be investigating, given all of this, the IRS, Congressman?
I think, Martha, the time has come. We need to look at potentially having a special prosecutor in this case. You have the Attorney General himself, who should be ultimately responsible for this investigation. He said he's had to recuse himself and did so a long time ago. If he's unable to oversee something like this, I think a special prosecutor is something we should start the debate and discussion about, because this seems to be an incestuous type of situation where not only the IRS, but did it potentially go to other areas, and maybe a special prosecutor is warranted in this case.
So what will you call for that? And what happens next?
Well, today, right now I'm saying for the first time publicly, I think that's something we need to explore. At 1 o'clock today, we have Attorney General Holder on the Judiciary, coming before the House Judiciary Committee. I'm on that committee along with some others. I think Chairman Goodlatte and others will obviously be probing him about this IRS scandal and a host of other things. And maybe that's something that will come up and be explored.
The question is whether or not the IRS, which is obviously an institution that everybody needs to have faith in this country, whether or not there was an abuse of power. So, we know what came out of that Inspector General's report. And as John Boehner said, he feels that the White House is hung up on the word if with regard to all of this, and a lot of reporters questioning. Jay Carney yesterday said they're not an if in terms of whether or not these groups were screened for and targeted. But one of the big questions that remains here is who told these folks to do so?
Yeah, originally one of the stories came out that it was happening in the Ohio field office, but then very quickly we're hearing stories that it's happened much more pervasively. I think if you also go back and look at the testimony before Charles Bustani there at the Ways and Means Committee, Senator Hatch there in the United States Senate, a long time ago, they were asking very hard questions of the senior management, and they were totally denying this. And also, I think it's curious that the White House is still saying if, knowing how these Inspector General's reports work. The executive branch gets these in weeks before we get them, because they have a chance to review and actually offer comment to potentially edit these types of things. The Inspector General takes those into consideration, may add or not comments, but I'm proud of the work, at least on the surface, of what the Inspector General did. But I know in the Oversight Committee, Chairman Issa has announced that next Wednesday with Congressman Jim Jordan, they're going to be leading the charge and diving a little deeper into this issue and some other things with the IRS.
Before I let you go, will you be asking Eric Holder today in that hearing if indeed he will be overseeing the IRS investigation and whether or not he thinks that's appropriate, given all the background here.
I think there are a host of members that are going to dive deep into that issue. I'm a little further down the dais, so I don't know if by the time it gets around with me, that's will have not already been asked. But it's obviously something that the Attorney General is going to have a lot of hard questions on. And you can't just keep hiding every time, Martha, between, oh, there's an investigation, oh, I've recused myself. You can't keep doing it. Just because there's an investigation doesn't mean you don't answer questions to the United States Congress.
We'll see what happens today at 1. Congressman, thank you.
Martha.